Hercules away.
Copy, Hercules away.
Control deck, we have Hercules past transom.
Copy, Hercules past the transom.
Control deck, that is tether all out.
Copy, tether is fully deployed.
Control, back deck, that is Atalanta in the water.
Copy, Atalanta's in the water.
Control, back deck, I'll stop 50 meters. Control has been sent to the van.
Confirm, we have control.
This is an audio slate for dive H2071. UTC time is 032335. Mark.
I'm going to 0 tether ups and 6 8 ups. Lights coming on. Yes, 0 the reps. Yep. Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. If I may ask the back row to do some introductions. And so I will start. My name is Imade, and I am the Science Communication Fellow for this watch.
Hi everyone, my name is Maikane Andres and I'll be the scientist on this watch.
Hello everyone, my name is May Lubetkin and I'm the science manager on the ship and the data logger on this watch. Welcome.
In your front row, this is Megan Putz. I am the navigator.
This is Jake Bonney. I'm in the Herc seat.
This is Sarah Surgeon. I'm in the Atalanta seat.
All right,
Here we go.
heading down. Comps all look good. Start the seeking.
So to all of our viewers and listeners, we are roughly 5 nautical miles east of the northeastern corner of Babalao Island. And for today's dive, we expect to reach max depth of 3,800 meters.
Woo!
Our deepest dive so far. We expect to reach bottom time at around 2:45 local time, and right now it is 12:29 p.m.
Do you want me to pan right at all or no?
That's all right.
Okay. And how often do you do that? Actually?
Every few hundred meters or something.
Working.
Camera's there, it's just not getting to the screen.
Hmm. Are those winch gauges, the two farthest left, just slightly left of the green tape?
The one's furthest left.
Like that we have to check with the green tape? So the top and bottom with the little tape notches?
Yeah. They might look a little
Could
low.
Could be. I wasn't sure with where I'm sitting, but just
Something to note and let
keep
Mike
it in.
know of.
Mhm.
But yeah, I switched back because I couldn't get it to show up. But I'll switch over right now. Yeah, black screen. Roger. Sounds good. Yeah, I'll leave it up while you poke it. So which direction's the slope? West? Okay, cool. Nice. Oh, it's back. Reboot of the okay, roger that. Cool. Yep, all good besides the ground fault.
So to all of our listeners and viewers, our website is currently undergoing some maintenance. And so even though the chat says we are unavailable and it is displaying the red button, we are very much receiving your questions. At the same time, the website is currently showing that the ship is in port. And again, once all the maintenance is completed, those will be updated.
My sister was telling me that she like tunes in during her work day and stuff, and she's like, everyone's voices are so like soothing and relaxing.
I love that. Yeah, my mom's watching right now. She's like, so when how long are you going to be on the bottom?
I know last night my sister's like, man, I saw like all these people out around the vehicle for a minute scurrying around, and all of a sudden they disappeared. Is that when like the thunder started? I was like, no, that was like science comes and gets all the samples and stuff, and now they're doing all their testing and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
yeah, everybody's
yes,
scurrying on deck.
like we do all our checks and get everything connected and emptied and that kind of stuff, and then the work goes inside for the testing and
then thunder shortly after.
yes. Yeah, that was quite a little storm we went through.
Yeah. I was up here and I could hear it. I was in the studio. I was like, whew, spicy.
I was like doing water checks on the vehicle, and then it got like uncomfortably close, and I was like, I'm done for a little bit.
Yep.
Going inside.
No rush.
Drag the. Thank you.
So to the front row, a viewer is asking, when was the last dive that took ROV Hercules to 3,800 meters or more?
I'm not sure.
We did some deep dives in American Samoa.
That was the last expedition.
Yeah, that was
before,
the previous ROV expedition.
right before Palau. And then a question to May. So what sorts of research do you guys typically do on the collected specimens after a dive?
Yeah, well, typically for cruises like this, we're mostly just we're describing and preserving the specimens for future analyses. So when we collect a biological sample or geological sample or water for eDNA, we bring everything into the wet lab and we'll process the biological samples first. Normally we'll the way it goes is we'll image them, measure, describe, try to identify them as fine as we can, and then we'll preserve them, typically in ethanol or some other preservative. And for rocks, we do something similar, but we just dry them out, and sometimes we'll cut them open with our rock saw or break them open to get a look inside, since there's a lot of weathering on the outside of rocks, so you can't quite see how they look on the inside. And for water, we filter that for eDNA, so that's a long process of just drawing water from the Niskins and pulling them through a filter with a pump, and then that filter will be frozen and saved for analysis later. Sometimes ships are equipped with more analytical instruments where we can actually do some of those analyses on board in real time, and it can also help plan other targeted research during the course of the cruise. But for cruises where we really don't know very much about this area and it's more of an exploration type cruise, we're trying to collect as many representative samples while keeping the environment preserved and taking as little as we need to document the areas that we're looking at for all sorts of different analyses later on.
Will we be collecting eDNA again for this dive?
We will, yeah. And I was just updated on the eDNA plan for this dive, so we'll collect a sample right when we get to the bottom. Once we're all settled up with the vehicles and white balanced and everything, we'll get a bottom water sample, since this is a really deep dive, and that could be really interesting for the Pickrick eDNA program. And then normally we have specific depths that we will stop at along the way for eDNA collection, and we've slightly modified those depths for this dive. So we'll get another one at 3,000 meters and 1,500 meters, 1,000, 500, and 250.
All right.
And the rest of the time we'll be looking for nice biological specimens to collect. That's the primary focus of this dive.
A viewer is asking, how do you decide which biological specimens are candidates for being slurped or boxed?
It's a great question. Well, we have scientists on the ship and many scientists on shore who study different types of organisms and have a whole range of different interests. But on a really general scale, we're interested in documenting organisms that represent these habitats. So if we see an organism several times in an area, it's a nice candidate to collect to. But on the other end, if we see something that is a little bit more rare or less common, that's also maybe a nice selection as well. Or things that we've seen in the past but haven't been able to collect, so it would support getting a better understanding of a species that has not been collected yet. That would be another good candidate, but it all kind of depends on the interest of the different scientists. But since this is a region that has been really poorly explored at the depths that we're going, just about anything in this area is going to be new to science and new to human eyes. So yeah.
And then one last question on that. So when a specimen is being slurped, is it also slurping water to keep it alive?
Yeah, definitely. All of the slurp chambers, these sort of cylindrical bottles, are full of water, and it's slurping up whatever the slurp is pointing to, and sometimes sediment will get in there, or other tiny organisms. We collected a little gastropod yesterday, and it came with an even tinier little gastropod with it. So yeah, it's essentially a little vacuum cleaner attached to the ROV. So
All right, thank you.
and the water is very cold when it gets back on deck. Since the bio boxes and everything are in basically coolers, when we go take the samples out of the bio boxes, you can feel that really cold, deep sea bottom water, which is great to keep them in a cooler environment to preserve them before they get to the lab.
So again, to all of our new listeners and viewers, we are roughly 5 nautical miles east of the northeastern corner of Babav Island, where we will be diving down to max depths of 3,800 meters. And we expect to reach bottom time at around 2:45 p.m. local time. And this will be a 16-hour dive duration.
All stop on the winch.
Again, if you are just now tuning in to nautiluslive.org, our website is currently under maintenance. So even though the red button is saying that our team is not available to answer questions, we are very much online and available to answer questions. At the same time, the map on the left side of the website is showing that the ship is in port, and those will all be resolved once maintenance is completed. So how does the 16-hour dive work? And do we all rotate? The answer to that is yes. We have shifts for 4 hours. So from 12 to 4, 4 to 8, and then 8 to 12. And then each watch is again 4 hours, and so we rotate between shifts twice a day.
All right. Good to descend.
A question to the science team. A viewer is wondering if we've encountered any kind of siphonophore species.
On this dive so far, I don't think so. But in general, yes, many times. Yeah, they're really neat. I bet Megan would have some different siphonophore species to share with us.
Oh, I don't know my jellies very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're
Never mind.
midwater things aren't my expertise. But we have seen some. If you watch on the way down, you'll probably spot a few. They're quite common here in the midwater. They'll float by. We saw a number on the last couple dives, usually in the Atalanta view. There's also a bunch of jellies that you'll spot, like your standard jellyfish in addition to siphonophores.
Sometimes they quickly go by off on the edge of the view, but
Yeah.
I think there's a few pretty nice Nautilus Live highlights of some really beautiful siphonophore zooms and close-ups that we've seen on other cruises.
Yeah, we got a zoom the other day that was pretty nice.
Oh yeah, like that purple kind
Yeah.
of pink one. Yeah, that one was pretty cool.
Was that yesterday?
It was 2 days.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
Was it only yesterday?
They all just kind of blends together. We're up and sleeping at different weird times.
Oh.
It's hard to tell when that one day begins and the next one ends.
I have to admit, I'm a bit sad that when I put you on camera, you're not wearing a nudibranch costume anymore.
Yeah, I know. My mom was like, "No nudibranch today."
I loved it.
Like,
It was
it's
so
November
good.
1st.
I mean, we could just continue it.
I think I might. I think it's going to be my midnight to 4, standard wear.
It
Nice.
brought good luck, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a great watch.
What was the species we saw that we slurped?
Oh, the pluribranch?
Yeah, the pluribranch. Pluribranch. That one.
It was pretty cute.
It looked pretty funky in the lab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little deflated.
Yep. Yeah, it was definitely An interesting morphology.
Okay.
That should do it for the website. And then it'll take a minute to refresh for it to come through, but if you refresh that page, it should show. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. A bit of a technical question for the front row. Does the cable for the ROVs need to be lubricated as it is going down or when retrieving the ROVs?
It's actually being greased currently on the back deck. And we don't do it often, maybe once a season, and then once in the off season. But yeah, we're currently doing it right now, and it's good because this is a deep dive, so we get to grease a larger portion of the cable as it descends.
When you do it in the off season, is it fully extended?
Occasionally they've done that in the past, but there's other ways to grease the winch. I don't know. I haven't been a part of that, but
Feels like there's a lot of marine snow.
So to all of our new listeners and viewers, we are currently descending down and are expected to reach maximum depths of 3,800 meters. We launched the ROVs at around 12 p.m. local time, and we expect to reach the bottom at around 2:45 p.m. local time. So just a little bit over an hour and 40 minutes to go.
The video is occasionally choppy, but right now it looks good.
So, a question to the front row. Are we able to measure how strong the water current is at in the deep sea?
We don't have any sensors on the vehicle for that, but we can kind of let the ROV float and not give it any thrust and see which direction and how fast the vehicle moves. And that's a kind of a good proxy for seeing how fast the current is in any direction. There are sensors out there that measure current, but we don't have any on the vehicle.
So here's a fun question for everyone. If you could take ROV Hercules to explore anywhere in the world, where would you go? For me, I would really like to continue exploring Palau.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. I mean, I'm pretty happy with here too, you know?
Yeah, here's great.
Here is great. Yeah, I don't really want to move.
Yeah, that, like, the first dive site was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Everything
so
that
cool.
we saw.
We're Team Palau.
I think, yeah, I've never thought of this question before, but maybe along some part of one of the mid-ocean ridges that hasn't ever been visited. That would be pretty cool.
I would love to visit a spot with like an active underwater volcano.
Oh, that is cool.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
that
very
sounds
fun.
nice.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
It'd be cool to see like pillow lavas being formed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely been a rare experience for a few. Some pretty cool footage of West Mata and Rhoda eruptions. If you Google that on YouTube, they should be on there.
I think that I would like to do Palau too, as well as the rest of Micronesia, just because it is very unexplored.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool unexplored areas, especially here in the Western and South Pacific. So I know next year is going to be really exciting for dives. So I'm really looking forward to that. Going to the Marianas and the Marshall Islands and the Solomon Islands and Fiji. So yeah, it's going to be hard to decide which one of those cruises I should participate in. Though I think any one of those is going to be fantastic.
Yep, they all sound pretty awesome.
Right? National Geographic is also visiting a lot of those same places with the Pristine Seas program.
Cool.
So, and that's work that we've been working on in the lab back in Honolulu, looking at the drop camera footage. So being able to pair ROV dives with those drop camera deployments is going to be really interesting.
Just a little bit of footage from those, I was like, so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
How long does it take you to annotate the footage? Like, can you do it pretty close to real time? Or
Oh, absolutely not.
I was going to say, I could see you doing it, but...
Oh, real time, that's impossible. It really depends on the density of the animals. So our first dive, it would probably take me 5 to 6 hours for every hour of video to annotate. Yesterday's dive, I might be able to do close to like 2 hours for every 8 hours of work. So, yeah, 4 hours for every 1 hour of video.
Wow.
Maybe a little faster. You know, some of the areas were pretty sparse with animals. When I'm not seeing anything, I do fast forward the video. I don't necessarily want to listen to myself talk. I think that's the hardest part of the job. If you're listening to yourself say silly things on SPL.
So Daniel, we were going around, there was a really fun question, and the viewer was asking if you could take ROV Hercules anywhere in the world to explore, where would you go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the most excited expedition that I am, it's hopefully planned for next July. So we are in the early planning stages to take EV Nautilus over to the Solomon Islands to dive in this very narrow passage between the island of Guadalcanal, the Nagila Islands, and Savo Island. This is a very narrow place. You have, it's about 20 miles wide and 40 miles across, and this was the center stage of some of the most intense naval battles in World War II. This is known as the Iron Bottom Sound. As an area where there's over 100 shipwrecks and over 1,500 plane wrecks. Only a few of which have been found, and have been found by work done by our founder and president, Dr. Robert Ballard, in the early 90s. Discovered about a little over a dozen of the shipwrecks in the Iron Bottom Sound, but there's close to 70 very historically significant wrecks to be found. And so next July, we are planning an expedition to go survey these areas. So we're in the early planning stages. I really love the archaeology aspect of these missions. They touch upon another part of what we do. They're not just using our technology to survey areas of biological, geological importance, but also areas of archaeological and human history importance. So that's definitely one of it, but I think there's many others in the Western Pacific where we're going to be operating for the next several years. I think this general area that we're working in, basically between Guam, American Samoa, and westwards. Now this is an area that's very significant for many reasons. So this is also, just in general, the area where a lot of the action of World War II happened. So the Pacific Theater, a lot of historically significant wrecks. Also from a biodiversity perspective, this is the area, for shallow water ecosystems at least, is the coral triangle, the area on Earth where we have the highest biodiversity on Earth. And that's just for shallow ecosystems, because those are the ones that have been studied. In deep water, we have virtually no data, and these expeditions are going to be the very first ones. It's also areas that are culturally incredibly diverse and rich, with many cultures that have ventured and voyaged through these waters for millennia. The Lapita people are known as some of the most incredible navigators that ventured across the Pacific as early as 4,000 years ago and explored these areas. So we have incredible cultural diversity, biological diversity. We also have here the western rim of the Ring of Fire. So this is where we have an incredible abundance of hydrothermally active places where you can see magma extruding onto the seafloor. You have the deepest places on Earth. You have just so much diverse things to explore. So I think, I'm really excited for the next several years as EV Nautilus will be working in this part of the Pacific. We were operating in the Central Pacific for the last several years, where also tremendous work that we accomplished there. A lot to be done there, but yeah, I'm really looking forward for the next couple of years and what's there.
Yeah, next year's expedition sounds very, very interesting. So a question.
Or I'll stop on which.
Question for Maikani. You have a viewer that wants to know what types of habitats are you most excited about, and how did you become a scientist?
Good question. I think since I was in community college, I started studying coral reefs. So I've done most of my work on coral reef habitats, mainly coral ecology, and towards the end, or after obtaining my bachelor's degree, I did a little internship with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, where we studied deep sea larvae in the Arctic between Svalbard and Greenland. So those are the two main habitats that I've been studying. But I'm mainly leaning towards coral reef ecology because that's what I'm really interested in. And how did I become a scientist? I don't know. In high school, I was like, I really like science. And so that's just kind of how I became a scientist. Like, I like science, I like the ocean, put two and two together, become a coral reef scientist. So here I am. And I hope to learn more. There's so much more to learn. And I really encourage the younger people who do want to pursue a career in science to definitely go for it. Pickrick also has a lot of internship opportunities, and there's so many internship opportunities and scholarship out there that are for coral reef ecology and stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, someone is interested to know if there's a possibility to find chimeras around.
Ooh, chimera.
Oh, yeah, they're around here for sure.
I'll stop
I'll
on the
stop.
winch.
Yeah, and I don't want to jinx anything here, but yeah, they are some of the more deeper diving fishes up on a deeper depths, and today is going to be the deepest dives, the deepest planned dive of this expedition. So we'll be reaching the seafloor at around close to 4,000 meters, 3,800 meters, and now working our way up the slope to about 3,000 meters. So yeah, but you never know what you're going to find. So.
Yeah, the drop camera deployments that were done in March definitely showed a number of different chimeras showing up, the hydrolagus, and we are really excited to see them. They always attend bait if they're nearby, but we often see them with the ROV as well. I love how they swim. They're very, very graceful.
Copy that.
Roger,
Continuing
headed down. We're not even halfway yet. Hey, Rennie, what's up?
So, to the science team, do we know what is the deepest point in the Palau Trench? Is that 8,000 meters?
Yeah, just a few meters past 8,000 meters, so that's the deepest part, and that was reached by
Yes, so again, the Palau Trench is just a little bit over 8,000 meters. And for today's dive, ROV Hercules will reach maximum depths of about 3,800 meters.
It's a lot of waypoints.
So someone is asking what depths do Nautilus live in?
Yeah, before we go into the Nautilus, and I'll do a little research here because I believe there is different species at different depths. But one more thing I did want to add about the Palau Trench, and in particular in terms of relation of the dive that we are about to embark upon. So the deepest dive ever done here in the Palau Trench was done just a few years ago by Victor Viscovo's team, and that reached the bottom of the trench at just under 8,000 meters. We're actually not that far away from that point. We're going to be less than 10 miles away from that spot. And the dive actually was chosen specifically, basically, to try to bridge previous surveys, including those that reached the trench, and then some shallow work done by the National Geographic Pristine's team that worked just to our west. So we're basically planned this dive on purpose to go right in that middle spot, a wide depth range, about depths between 4,000 to 3,000 meters that have not been explored. And that was done on purpose so that we can use those previous surveys and add to them with this survey to try to get a good idea of what the vertical distribution of fauna and habitats look like. Now, Palau is very unique in that you have, it's one of the steepest slopes. The main the main island group is basically right next to the trench. You can go about a dozen or so miles offshore, and you can be close to the deepest place on Earth, and then it goes sharp up to the island group. So that's very unique that you have that place where you can go from the reef edge down to the abyss and beyond. And the one thing to add there is that this dive is going to be the only dive on this expedition that we'll be doing outside the National Marine Sanctuary. We'll be just inside, and it was again, that was on purpose. The Palau National Marine Sanctuary, for those that joined us a couple of days ago on that dive, really extraordinary. Just highlighted how much incredible habitats are yet to be discovered. We dove on a seamount where we found incredibly biodiverse communities at depths about 1,500 to 1,000 meters. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of what yet to be found in the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, and that we'll uncover here over the next couple of weeks. But these offshore habitats of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, they have really positive impacts, not just on those offshore places, but also to the near shore. They act as reservoirs of biodiversity. They can help replenish fish stocks that are fished out in other communities, and so understanding what's both inside the sanctuary and what's on its periphery, and how they're different and how they're connected, that's really important for resource management. And so that's why we decided to do this survey, to try to understand and quantify a little bit about the impacts of having such a large marine protected areas, the positive impacts on ecosystems surrounding it.
And then a follow-up question about the trench. Do we know what kind of science or research was done on that trench dive?
Yeah, that's a real good question. So besides the press articles, and there were quite a few, and very little publicly available information is available from those surveys. So we don't really know exactly what data was collected beyond the visual data there, and for what analyses are being done. That's something that we tried in the planning process, is to reach out and see what's there. And haven't yet gotten a handle of the data, but important is to do these follow-up surveys and try to bridge. A big part of what we do as part of the Ocean Exploration Trust, and also that's also not just our mission, but the mission of our sponsors, the NOAA Office of Ocean Exploration and Research, is to look at the unknown. And when you try to focus your efforts on the unknown, the first thing is to try to get a handle of what is known and where previous surveys are done. And so we've been working quite extensively of just trying to build a database of all previous explorations around the world, and that's not a trivial effort. There's a lot of data that is in different formats, some of which is easy to find, some of which is difficult to find. Some of the data sits in hard drives and people's desk, and just it's a big undertaking to try to understand everything that's been done before. But we do have a pretty good inventory of where, at least where previous deep sea explorations has occurred. So where a submersible, a drop camera, a ROV, or another vehicle has gone. That it's an ongoing process that is a big part of our planning processes before we go to a place, is just trying to understand what's been done before. And
I think so.
And just to follow up here on just did a little bit of research here on the Nautiluses. And so it looks like most species records of this are at depths shallower than 800 meters or so. So predominantly more shallow dwelling species. Most of our dives on this expedition are going to be deeper than that. We do have at least one dive that's going to be diving in the southern corner of the exclusive economic zone of Palau, where there's a very isolated seamount. There's really nothing around it, and that seamount has not been mapped, but based on the satellite altimetry data, it looks like it could summit at 500 meters or shallower, and I'm particularly excited about that depth. When you have something like that, where there's no really thing connecting it. Those provide really wonderful natural laboratories. When you have a thing like that in isolation, island ecosystems in general, when you look at just ecological research, island ecosystems are wonderful natural laboratories because they allow you to study different phenomena in a little bit in isolation. Charles Darwin work on the Galapagos Islands and the Hawaiian Islands. There's a lot of species that involved in these places because they were now separated from others. And that's islands, but seamounts in some extent are islands that have not yet made it to the surface, so they are in functionally very similar. They are these isolated places where you have things, the forces of nature working on them, separated from others spatially. And yes, I'm particularly excited about that dive. That will be part of the second expedition, so we'll be coming into port on November 11th, then taking a couple of days to swap some of our crew members and mission team, and then heading back out on November 11th, and then having another 11 days at sea, so diving daily through November 22nd. That second expedition is going to focus on the southern portion of the exclusive economic zone in Palau, and that's historically have even less explored than the northern part of it. And it's also interesting enough, so Palau, the southern portion of it, the Convention of Biological Diversity recognized the southern area as ecologically or biologically significant areas, and that was done about a decade ago, just in a meta-analysis looking at what data was available in terms of birds, marine mammals, fishes, anything that was done. And that southern area is recognized as one of the places on Earth. There's a whole suite of these ecologically and biologically significant areas, and yeah, it's going to be very interested to see and how that differs from what we see up here in the north. And that's a very unique opportunity on these next couple of weeks, is to get a complete, not just vertical cross-section is what we're doing today, but also horizontal in terms of spatially how these ecosystems are different and connected.
Just one last follow-up on that. Is there any other shallow dive aside from that 500-meter dive in the second expedition?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up here my the latest plans. One thing that I have to mention as a caveat is that we pulled out about 16 targets that were those are part of the planning process for this expedition. Those 16 targets were developed in consultation with a broader scientific community. So we had a very inclusive process that started a little over a year ago, where we announced a call for science input, where basically anyone could submit priorities for these expeditions. In addition to having like an online forum for people to submit, we had in-person meetings here in Palau and elsewhere to try to understand what some of the priorities were. Through that process, we got over 200 individual submissions in terms of what we should do and how we should go about with this expedition. And then we went through this very lengthy process with our science leads, Dr. Jeff Drazen, Dr. Brian Kennedy, and Ikelau Otto. How can we group them together and try to do something that honors all those submissions? And we came narrowed down to about 16 or so, and trying to cover as much ground, do actually some interesting science questions, some important managing questions that tie in existing scientific activities. So that was kind of the process. One thing to mention is, so the 70% of the exclusive economic zone of Palau has not yet been mapped. So there's no good seafloor maps. Like if you go to Google Earth, you could zoom in on Palau, and it looks like there's maps there, but that's satellite data. If you start zooming in more and more and more, it'll be eventually, in most of those places, become incredibly pixelated. And that's just because that data is derived from satellites, and that only resolves features that are about 1 kilometer in size. So anything that's smaller than 1 kilometer you wouldn't see. And there's also going to be discrepancies in the depths of those satellite-derived depth features. In many cases, when you have a satellite-derived map and then map it with multi-beam, it can be off by 500 meters or more in cases. So that's another important caveat. So in terms of the depths that we have of the targets, of these 16 targets, they range from about 500 to 4,000 meters. And yeah, the 500 feature is indeed the shallowest dive that we're going to do. But we still don't know actually how deep that's going to be, because we might map it with our modern sonars, and it might actually be a different depth, and it might be off by some. So it's really really exploration in its finest and the most truest sense. And I think for those of you who are terrestrial scientists, it's something that it's a little bit difficult to comprehend, perhaps. There's no equivalent of that. Like, if you can, on land, there wouldn't be an enormous mountain that you don't know about, because it's been seen, it's been mapped, has been charted. Here in Palau, there's over 200 seamounts, underwater mountains, and only about a dozen or so we have really good maps for. So close to 200 underwater mountains that we don't really know what the shape, size, and is. And that's, I think, it's just something that's, for context, really important to be aware of. Like, in some cases, there's a huge underwater mountain that's like 4,000 meters in elevation, but we don't really know what size it is, how it looks, and so it's really exciting to get to map this and then dive them and see what's there.
Right. So again, if you are just tuning in and now watching, we are located roughly 5 nautical miles east of the northeastern corner of Babaldav Island. We launched the ROV Hercules around 12 p.m. local time and are expected to reach the bottom at around 2:45 p.m. local time. And then for today's dive, we are expected to reach max depths of 3,800 meters, and this will be a 16-hour dive. So we have a question on how far down can Hercules go, and has it ever gone into the Mariana Trench or an associated area?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone in the, just take that, but yeah, so Hercules is rated to 4,000 meters. A couple of the pieces, the electronics of it are, that's what they're rated at. We actually have 7,000 meters of tether on our, and that's because we have several vehicles that can dive down to 6,000 meters. So Atalanta, that is currently hooked up, and that, for those of watching online, you can turn on the alternative camera, and that's the vehicle that's above it. We also have a miniature Hercules, so there's a smaller version of Hercules that is also rated to 6,000 meters. So now with 6,000 meters, that allows you to dive to about 95% of all depths that are found in the ocean, and that's typically most programs. That's a good cutoff point because that gives you so much capability of exploring. If you want to reach that other 5% that are deeper, including the Palau Trench, including the Mariana Trench, that gets down to over 10,000 meters in depth, then you need other technologies. We don't have ROVs on this vessel, but there are manned submersibles and that can go to those depths. But we work with our partners to deploy other assets. So the Ocean Exploration Trust is part of the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute. So this is a consortium of oceanographic institutions that work together to address the large knowledge gaps that exist in our ocean. Through that partnership, next year we'll be going to the Mariana Trench, and we'll be deploying 2 vehicles that can go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So we'll be working with the University of Rhode Island. They have a deep autonomous profiler that is full ocean depth rated, and we will be deploying it in the Mariana Trench, and we'll also be deploying another vehicle by partners at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. They have a profiler, and that's actually also co-led by one of the science co-leads that we have on board here, so Dr. Jeff Drazen and Dr. Glenn Wright at the University of Hawaii, and they are the leads on that project, so they will be also deploying their profiler, and so yeah, excited that we'll be deploying various assets in the bottom and deepest portions of the Mariana Trench next year, and that project is obviously exciting to see the deepest part of the trench. One important thing to mention on trenches is the water column above it. So those 10 plus kilometers that sit above the Mariana Trench are even more unexplored than the bottom of it. And so next year's project is actually focusing not just on what sits on the bottom, but what lives in the many kilometers of water above it. That has very important implications for oceanographic circulation and how these deep ecosystems get ventilated. And so, yeah, very excited. Next April, May, and early June, we'll have 2 expeditions that go back-to-back working in and around Guam and the Mariana Islands, working with ROV Hercules, likely with another autonomous vehicle, as well as 2 profilers, the latter 2 of which can go to the deepest parts of the ocean. And so, yeah, very excited to be able to be part of that endeavor as well.
No, stop. No, no.
So here's a bit of a difficult question. um, so for those countries that are looking at seafloor mapping and want to mine the seafloor, are there any concerns about sharing this type of information on a public domain?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, first of all, obviously, just addressing the environmental concerns about deep sea mining, and that's obviously something that we still know very little about. I think for those who've chimed in and seen or watched in, this is basically every dive on this expedition is going to be a place that no one has ever looked at. So, we know very little. We already know quite a bit in terms of the ecosystems that are found in the deep sea and their ability to recover from impacts and you know, and in cases like that where you have very little information but the risk for environmental impacts is big, this is where typically you invoke the precautionary principle as you move slow and you try to gather data before you make decisions, hopefully, because if you take the wrong decision, you might be in a situation where you can't go back. Now, in terms of the data we collect with EV Nautilus, so our mapping sonars, and especially at these depths, so particularly at depths where one of the things that is the mineral that is the first one that is being looked at to mine, so those are the manganese nodules. Those are found at depths about 5,000 meters and deeper on abyssal seaplane. With our mapping sonars, at those depths when we map, you get a resolution of, depending how you grid it, but more on the order of 100 meters or so. So you're not really seeing the fine level details for mining purposes. So in cases like this, and what's been done is basically using autonomous vehicles that have the sonars on them, and they get much closer to the seafloor, and then you can see things at a resolution of centimeter scale, and you can see the individual nodules. That's not something that we are doing on this expedition and others in this area. But it is a really important question about thinking about these things ahead. There are obviously unintended consequences of things, and that's something that we take very serious about the data that we collect and how we distribute it. And for most of the data that we collect, it is not considered sensitive, and it is a big part of our mission and a mission of our sponsors is to make that accessible to anyone that needs it. And in these expeditions, the data is going to be handed first and foremost to our partners in Palau and the management authorities there, who are the custodians of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, and need this data to be able to effectively manage these areas and make decisions about how to best care for this very special place. And then in addition to giving it to our management authorities, we also make that publicly accessible. So there's a series of websites that we work in that we make data accessible. There are certain cases where data is considered sensitive. The most relevant for this expedition is the potential to come across submerged archaeological resources, underwater cultural heritage sites like shipwrecks or planes. So we have been mapping to look for them and see if we can detect them. Those are features that are much larger. We've been mapping, actually looking specifically for them, a few wrecks that are 100 meters or bigger, so those are things that we can actually detect with our sonars. If we were to detect any of these, we would dive it and document it. Most of the data would be publicly accessible with the exception of the position information of these places. These are underwater cultural heritage sites, so if we were to find it, we want to make sure that those areas are protected from commercial looters or salvagers. There are also grave sites. Several of these wrecks are places where many people lost their lives, and we obviously want to handle that with great care and great respect for those who lost their lives and their family members. So there are several stipulations in how we handle our data. And so yeah, in cases where there is sensitive data and where there are international best practices or federal regulations, we adhere to those. But for the most part, we treat the data in a way that it makes most impact to the scientific and management community and try to distribute it widely and freely. We realize that these types of explorations require great investment in terms of bringing these technologies to the depth. It's a tremendous effort that goes into planning, and we want to make sure that those explorations don't just sit in the minds of the few people that watch these dives. We want to make sure that people for generations to come have access to that data. And there's just so many discoveries that can be done later. I think There's, I think we had this yesterday for those who chimed in. We had tuned in, we had a discussion about how long it takes for data to be, for species to be described after those were collected, and those are on the order of over a decade. And it's not uncommon that a discovery is made a decade after the data was collected, and that's just because it's a time-consuming process, and some of these analyses are not just looking at the data of this particular expedition, but trying to combine it with the many hundreds in other places to try to look at patterns and biogeographical and oceanographic patterns on a larger scale. So it's a lengthy process, and by making it publicly accessible in those cases where it's not sensitive, we ensure that this investment that was done in terms of bringing these expeditions can fuel and support and catalyze discoveries for many years to come.
Thank you, Daniel. Now, again, to all of our new listeners and viewers, we are currently 5 nautical miles, roughly 5 nautical miles east of the northeastern corner of Babaltov Island. We launched the ROVs around 12 p.m. local time and expect to reach the bottom at around 2:45 p.m. local time. So the max depth for this dive is about 3,800 meters, and if we were convert that to feet, it is roughly 12,467 feet. And this will be a 16-hour dive. And so right now it is 1:57 p.m. local time, and the ROV Hercules depth is around 2,480 meters. So a little bit less than an hour until we reach the bottom. So a viewer is asking,
I'll stop.
what are we expecting to see or hoping to see on this dive?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I mean, the short answer is we don't really know here for Palau, so this is going to be depths that are unsurveyed, basically, completely in Palau, at 4,000 to 3,000 depth range. So to the best of our knowledge, no previous surveys at those depths. Obviously, those depths have been explored in nearby locations, so there's certain species and certain groups of animals and habitats that we expect to see. So this is, that's one thing. I think for those folks that saw the last two dives, especially that saw the first dive, in general, there's a pattern. As you go deeper, there's less abundance of animals, so that's just a function of less food. There's less animals basically as you go deeper because there's less food and that's probably a trend that we'll see. So don't expect to see enormous rainforests here, so it'll be sparsely populated. We are hoping to see that most of the substrate is going to, we're trying to basically target a place where it's the steepest, so we're trying to make sure that this track covers as much hard ground as possible. There's several taxa of deep sea fishes, so there'll definitely be some rat tails and other common fishes that we'll see at these depths. Probably quite a few black corals are common at these depths, and different groups of gorgonian corals too. Sponges, but yeah, in general we expect to find a lower abundance than what people saw yesterday, and that definitely than what we saw the day before yesterday, where we came across these really abundant places.
So another fun question for the back row. If you had to be a deep sea creature, what would you pick?
Oh, Megan was a nudibranch yesterday.
I think I choose the Dumbo octopus.
That's a good one.
What's Rennie's? Isn't it like the flamboyant something worm?
I kind of just want to say a sea cucumber. Now and then if I'm startled, I just get to kind of flail around and everyone's like, ooh. But it is weird to think that you can see my insides.
It is cool when they're like swimming around.
Some of them are so beautiful.
Yeah, it's not what you would expect, is it?
I think I would be, I've never thought of this question before, so my answer might change in the future, but I think I would be the microbial mats on hydrothermal vents that are really furry, fluffy, like white, flowing. They just look so peaceful and enjoying their spa-like hot spring.
Probably sounds exceptionally good when the van's cold.
Yeah, exactly. If I could just transform into fur at the spa in the deep sea.
Ooh, good one.
I want to be that little crab that carries around the coral.
Oh, yes.
There's a crab that carries coral.
Yeah. They just have it like on their back. They're just like carrying it around.
They each have their own unique style.
I think I'd be an anglerfish, be the light in everyone's life. I don't know. They're kind of scary, but kind of cute in a sense. What would you be, Imada?
A dumbo octopus. Those are very, very cute.
Very.
I think the same viewer is commenting that they want to be a skate or a ray, but they don't fancy their diet.
We did collect a skate egg the other day, yeah. That was pretty cool.
So another interesting question. So what are some of the mysterious deep sea animals that are rarely recorded but have been caught on EV Nautilus's cameras?
Well, I mean, depends on how you define that. We haven't done a lot of explorations, so some things that we might think are rare might be more common than we realize. So every time we dive, we learn more about the ecology of the deep sea floor, and what we're going to find is always going to be very different from the previous dive.
This is the third watch I've mentioned, Deep Staria enigmatica, but I think it's a good example. We collected the best footage of this species back in 2017, and since it's a really large Medusa jelly that is in the blue water, in the midwater, it hasn't been observed very much and not with very good footage, so I think that would be a good example of one. But probably a lot of the things that we're observing that we don't know, the possibility of a lot of new species and unseen organisms on the seafloor is quite high, and then there's quite a lot of microbial life that we can't see with the cameras. So, yeah, so there's probably much more that we don't even know that we're imaging that is unknown to science and unknown to humans.
Just under 1,000 meters to go.
Getting there. Starting to get cold.
Sorry, I had to turn down the temperature because the van was getting a little warm.
Yeah, it's really hot outside. And my corner is the coldest.
I don't know about that.
I was gonna say,
Is your corner the coldest?
AC right
We've got,
behind.
yeah.
We beg to
We're
differ.
I feel like our
blasted.
corner is the same.
You should come back here sometime.
I've been.
I feel like I need to get the back row, like sleeping bags or
Yeah,
down suits.
thanks.
Oh, we were definitely joking about that on the last cruise, how Santiago had his sleeping bag. And he didn't have a sleeping bag, but we were getting a little silly, 12 to 4.
I
And
have 6 layers on,
Yeah.
2 neck warmers and a hood, so
You need one of those heated vests.
that would be
Have
cool.
you tried one of those?
I
really
have
good.
not tried.
And
You
heated
would
gloves
definitely know how to
as
stay
well.
warm. Erin spends a lot of time in cold
It's
places.
a game changer. They've got rechargeable batteries in them too.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I've got those like little snap hand warmers. Those are really nice.
Jake's just sitting up here in a t-shirt.
I know, right?
I think
I've
maybe
got
his
fleece
seat is
leggings
the
on.
warmest.
I'm always like, I don't know how
And
You
a
you
feel my
flannel.
toes. I'm never just always awake and freezing.
Yeah, but Jake's chair is quite toasty, I think.
I think his seat's the warmest, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get this heater right above me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what that is?
Yeah.
Keep you nice and ready for meal times.
Yeah, like I thought, oh, it'll be fine, because I'm used to like my house being at like 64 degrees, and I usually like it a lot colder, but then after usually about hour 2 or 3, I'm like, getting chilly.
Yeah,
do
yeah,
have
it's
a
not so bad
giant-
at first, but then it gets a little...
I've got a giant down jacket.
Oh, look at
if
that, we're
anyone
getting our
ever needs it.
3,000 meter weirdness. Does it every time. I don't know what it is about 3,000 meters.
I'm really excited. Get down and maybe have like an hour on the bottom, and then get to come back for a bit.
Yeah, we get our bonus, our encore.
Vehicles just bounce around.
Yeah. I'll stop.
I'll stop.
Even though we've taken breaks, it still feels like we should get there about the time that we thought,
Yeah.
like 2:45.
Thank you.
Power up.
A viewer who is still in the spirit of Halloween or celebrating Halloween wants to know if there's been any spooky or unexplainable encounters on a dive.
Well, I mean, there's always something spooky.
Yeah.
We had that skeleton-looking Skeletor sponge the other day.
That was actually today.
Oh, is that today? Oh my goodness. I don't know.
That was at like, yeah,
that was this
2 in the morning. Yeah.
Wow. That white skeleton.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
okay.
it was manganese encrusted, so it looked a bit dark, but
Oh, I was talking about the live one.
oh, okay. Yeah, we collected a dead sponge.
Going down. Yeah, it was the same sponge, same kind. But yeah. It looks a little creepy. But it's really beautiful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Picniconians wouldn't want to see one of
Oh
those in my
yeah.
house.
The
No.
picnic